Welcome back to another episode of Money Talk with Melanie. And actually, I just did welcome back to another episode of Money Talk with Melanie. And actually, it's the second hour of Money Talk with Melanie because it's only my second time doing 2 hours. I'm going to get used to doing 2 hours. It's good. It's all going to be fine. And my guest just popped up as well, Mr. John Burnett. How are you, Mr. John Burnett?
I'm well, blessed, and highly favored.
Oh, look at you. Well, blessed and highly. You're like fancy Christian. Well, I apologize for not like giving you like any lead time. Like I just answered the phone and you on the air. I'm sorry. I apologize.
I always stand ready.
Oh, I like that. That is very good. Like literally, your timing was actually perfect. Like my commercial went off. I did my opening. This is only my second show doing 2 hours. So I'm still working on the transition a little bit. You know, my producer is just really a slacker. You know, you gotta.
Well, all sounds good to me.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for being on the show today. I really appreciate it. We had fun the first hour. I had to kind of wing it. Unfortunately, my first guest fell ill, so I had to do like a little freestyle Friday type thing. But it was fun. I always like doing that.
You should have pinged me. I could have actually adjusted to the 5 o'clock, but it's all good.
It occurred to me, but I don't want to do that, you know. So
we could have both experienced 2 hours.
Well, it's certainly good to talk to you. Before we move forward, do you want to tell the audience a little bit about yourself, a little bit about who you are, and this is your first time on Money Talk with Melanie, and we know, you know, they don't know you unless, you know, because you're on the show, they've never heard of you or anything. I'm kidding.
Well, I appreciate being on the show. I wear various hats, one of which I'm the CEO of One Empire Group. My background is in financial services and finance and risk management, operational risk, governance, compliance, and so forth. Then I currently teach at NYU. I teach 3 courses there, international political economy, organizational behavior, and business organization and management. And I also, from time to time, I teach a few courses at Hampton University online. And I'm known as the Black Republican in New York City, but I go on different shows like Fox or some international shows in London, and a lot of podcasts such as yours, and just share my ideas on money, business, politics, because I think, you know, at that intersection, the more Main Street knows and understands about those things, how money and politics and all the other things come together, I think they can make more informed decisions. Exactly.
And that was actually the idea behind Money Talk with Melanie, was so that, you know, the people at the kitchen table could understand that their vote matters, that economy, you know, that the economy and politics and their values, you know, they all affect each other. They're all interchangeable. There's a synergy there that they need to acknowledge and understand. So I completely agree with you there.
True. Well, in the consciousness of the average person, they see these pillars of power as separate pillars vertically. I see it actually cutting across and all being part of the same thing. So you can go vote, but that same power and energy that you place into voting, you need to also place into increasing your financial and economic understanding of the economy, understanding of investments, understanding how money works. And then also with those two things, the vote and that financial and economic understanding, you can better hold public servants accountable. While at the same time, you're equipped with the tools on how to grow wealth.
But you know, people don't do that. I was having a conversation with a relative the other night about this very thing. And he said to me, it was a great conversation, but he said to me that he found those things to be, and I'm sure you've heard this as well, he found those things to be too complex. And that's one of the things that we do, I think, in my opinion, as Republicans, that Democrats do better than we do. You know, they appeal to the emotion, and of course we get into the minutia of what you just said. You know, we understand the minutia behind the way the economy works, and we'll start explaining that, and people's eyes glaze over. They'll be.
I think it's hard. I think it's harder to be a slave to the system than to learn certain things that might be a little challenging, but is well within your grasp and reach, especially in this day and age where there's so much free information on the net,
yes,
different shows, and so forth, like this podcast and things of that nature. It takes a hunger, and you have to use Ms. Hamer's saying, people complain a lot, but I don't think they're sick. I don't think they're sick and tired of being sick and tired enough. Because when you get to that point and you see how other people are making it, both on Main Street and those that are elite, at some point it needs to cross your mind, like, what am I doing wrong? Or more importantly, what are the right things to do? And it takes a certain mindset. And I hear a lot of times people say, well, I don't like risk, right? And I understand that. But the biggest risk is not taking one.
That is so true.
And nobody stands still. If you think you're standing still, you're not standing still, because time is always moving, which means that if you're standing still, you're actually falling further behind. So the key is you have to get in the game. If you find yourself playing a lot of scratch-offs, you know, that some might see that as taking risk and placing a hope in a long-shot dream. But if you just look at how you're spending money, even a little bit of money, understanding the power of interest. I often tell people, interest can work against you and it can work for you. If interest doesn't engage in discrimination, it's in the power of your decision making. If you get into debt or use certain things, debt instruments, and then you get choked up in debt, then that interest is going to choke you. If you start placing some money in interest-bearing instruments, but preferably in real investments to get a return, then you're actually employing your money to go make money.
Exactly. You sure are. You sure are. But, you know, people, by and large, it's so difficult to get some people to grasp that concept. And I love what you said about there not being prejudice in interest. There really isn't. I mean,
no, absolutely. See, you got to understand money and interest, and it's going to be one of the chapters in my book that I'm drafting. The goal of just to simplify it, if let's say you own a house, for argument's sake, you're paying 6% interest or 8% on the house, depending upon when you bought it and whether or not you refinanced. On your credit cards, you're paying 13%, 15% interest, and if you have any other type of borrowing, it's a lot of interest, right? So many times when you're paying the minimum payment per month, or even a little extra, many times the interest carries over and is capitalized. So you find yourself falling behind the 8 ball. So always, just generally, I advise people to say, you know what, try to put some of your extra funds or disposable income into higher interest or potential interest-bearing opportunities that surpass the cost of money.
Right.
So if you're paying 13% on your credit cards and you have a few dollars in your savings account that's getting 1% interest, you also have a triple tax, potentially, depending upon how much interest you receive, you can have a triple tax liability at the local, state, and federal level. So you're actually earning less than 1% compared to the amount of interest that you're paying. So you're not even giving your finances enough opportunity to surpass the cost of money. Not even before factoring in inflation.
And
so this is really simple stuff that is not too far-fetched, that if people actually stop, take personal responsibility, and take an interest in their own personal well-being and finance, and not outsource that responsibility to government or any company, I think people will be better off.
I think you're right, and it's the kind of I explain it to people this way. It's painful and it's work. It's like dieting. It's like exercise. It's like anything else that has a huge benefit. Your financial health is work. You know, I just started back running, and I say that with air quotes, because I'm not quite up to full-fledged running for the whole 30 minutes yet. But I just started back after an injury. I hurt my foot about a year ago. But I just started back, and it hurts. You know, it's painful. But I know at my age, if I want to have some longevity and live and be healthy and enjoy my life, this is what I got to do. Your financial health is the same way. You got to do the work.
I hear you, Melanie, but I got to push back on a little bit.
What's that?
Fundamentally, I totally understand.
Yes.
But yeah, because it's hard to get motivated sometimes to go to the gym, right? So I totally get that.
Yes.
But let me tell you, I never heard anybody say, "I'm tired of making money."
That's true. That's true.
So that's true. All this money today, I never heard anybody get tired of it. Especially when you start making money. I never heard of it. So it does. So it's not even. So it's technically easier than going to the gym.
Oh, it's definitely easier than going to the gym. I agree with you. But people don't, and I think especially your like median to high income people are so busy making money that they don't pay attention to maintaining it. It's kind of weird.
Well, my father always said it's not how much money you make, it's what you do with what
right.
And these are also biblical principles, right? There's the scripture that talks about the talents, right?
Yes.
So the person that had 10 talents, they put it to work. Their talents were doubled. The person that had 5, they put it to work. It was doubled. The person that had 1 talent didn't do anything with it, and guess what? It was taken from him. So,
yes.
So whatever you have, do with what you have, and make sure that it grows. So we have to be a good steward over what we have, not look at someone else. Because again, with time and even a few dollars, the power of interest, just like it works against you, you get behind the 8 ball, it puts you in front of the 8 ball.
Exactly. That is very true. And, I tell people all the time, you'd be surprised what we spend. Those apps where you track, Mint is one of my favorite ones that track your money. Those things are eye-opening. I mean, really, the first time I used one and found out I was spending like $75 a month on coffee, I was like, really? This is like, that's a bill. Like what? Like what? I'm like, yeah, time to buy a coffee pot. Like that's ridiculous. That's a ridiculous. So
you have to track your spending, but you also have to make a conscious effort on as far as where you put your money. And there's a poem called "If," and part of "If" it says, "If you can meet with triumph and disaster, and treat those 2 imposters just the same." In other words, and if I would put it into a money terminology, have a capitalistic mindset. Now, people hear capitalism or capitalistic, and they think of it as a dirty word. No, it's just a perspective. So you can make money and grow wealth in good times, and you can also do it amid bad times. Let me give you an example of the latter. So when the Great Recession started, and things were falling apart, there were a lot of people pulling out of the market, myself included. And when I started to observe what was happening, I saw the bailout, TARP and everything. Then I also saw Warren Buffett, and I said, wow, he must be losing a lot of money. But I began to look at what decisions he was making, and he put $5 billion with a B, not million, $1 billion into Bank of America. And I said to myself, wow, he's putting $5 billion into Bank of America, and the government also provided a baseline safety net for the banks. I said, Warren Buffett is not losing money like that. Plus, he negotiated that $5 billion to receive like a 7% interest coupon. It was a preferred stock offering. So I said to myself, you know what? If Buffett is putting his money there, that's where John Burnett is going to put a few dollars into Bank of America. So I bought a few thousand shares of Bank of America, and guess what? Years later, it quadrupled. Now it's I think it was around $5-6. Now it's at $30. And if you look, and if I held on to all of it, that would have been 6 times my money.
Whoa! Wow! Well,
but also think about what was happening at that time.
Right.
Mass hysteria.
Yep.
Mass confusion. What do I do? A lot of terror and fear. Right. Again. If you could meet with triumph and disaster and treat those two imposters just the same, there are opportunities and turmoil, and there could be disaster that possibly awaits even in good times.
Okay, so that's a great transition into what our topic was. We were talking the other night, it might have been last night. This day has been really long, so it could have been last night we were talking about this, or the night before last. We said, what are we going to talk about? We were talking about how, the economy and the market, really operates in cycles. And, we haven't had a downturn or a crash or anything like that in a good while. And we typically, we're kind of due for one. And I said to you, we're due for one, but Donald Trump is president. So, what does that mean since Donald Trump is president? We're due for a downturn. We're kind of due for a crash. And I did a little Google search just to see what some of the economists were saying. Not that it matters, because, economists said that the minute he was elected, the market was going to crash, and complete opposite happened. And of course, I found today when I was doing some research for the show that economists were all over the map. Some said, why we could be, we could have highs, from now until 2026. And some said, why the market's going to crash next week. So,
Right.
it was like,
economists are like doctors, right?
Right.
One doctor can say, you have a year. Another doctor say you can have 6 months. Another doctor say, it might be tough, but I think we can beat this, right? So It all depends upon perspective.
Right. That's true. So so what's John Burnett's perspective?
Well, this is what I say about the market. You're right. Market goes in cycles, right? It ebbs and flows. One of the reasons why. Well, let's look at the past, right? Not so distant past. From 2008 up until 2016. So, we had the Great Recession. People sold out of assets and went into cash, right? So the market went down, I think, to about 8,000, maybe 7,900, right, on the Dow. So that was the low as it relates to the market. But you had all this cash on the sideline and interest rates are near zero. So even if you do very little or nothing at all, eventually that cash is going to come back in.
Okay.
Separate and apart from any policy. Why? Because when you factor in pension funds and other investments, annuities, all these different instruments, even life insurance, when you pay your life insurance payment, they're taking that money and investing it into Wall Street and guaranteeing your death benefit. So all of this cash on the sideline earning near zero money is not going to stay there forever. So theoretically, the bottom of the market is never really the bottom because that cash is eventually going to come back in.
True.
I just want to make sure that's clear. So what would be the actual valuation when you add the sideline cash and Dow? I don't think anyone's come up with that statistical or mathematical equation yet. But in any case, a baseline was given to the market. The money eventually came back in, and it actually went back up to the pre-2008 level and a little bit higher. Now, from the time that he took office, actually even before, the day after he was elected, the market jumped substantially.
Right.
Right. So when you look at the day after he was elected up until now, it's a 46% increase, almost 50% increase since he was elected. Now what's the difference between those two periods? The difference is deregulation, lower taxation, and honestly, speaking positively about American business. Speaking positive about America's possibilities, its wealth, and so forth, people feel extremely confident in that. The business community is no different. And the difference, even amid tariffs, even amid an inflationary market with respect to raising interest rates, the market is still shrugging that off. But when you look at between 2008 and 2016, the interest rates were kept near zero. You know what, Melanie? If I actually gave you an opportunity, or your view is an opportunity, to have near 0% interest, right? Where money was it was very easy to get a return, right? While the baseline interest rates are kept down low, that actually gives you a good support base for growth.
It certainly does.
Because the cost of capital is not as much. Now you're not getting a return on cash, so it technically forces you, going back to my other illustration, it forces you to invest into the market.
Okay.
Because cash is paying near zero.
Okay.
So in order to get a return, you have to go into the market.
Now here's where the other side of the aisle starts playing around with words and saying that, corporations are being given all these breaks and this, that, and the other. Now, because the theory, it's not even a theory, it's economic principle that you just presented is why the economy is growing and people are benefiting and jobs are being created. But, the left is saying, that, the rich are getting richer, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, when the rich get richer, jobs.
Well, Melanie, let me stop you right there. Look, the thing is, of course, the rich is going to get richer.
Right.
I gave you a view as an example. While everyone else was bailing out, theoretically, right? Warren Buffett went in.
Right. Right.
So you can't. It's just like Lotto. You got to be in it to win it.
Right.
If you're not in it, and more people are in it,
Right.
then yes, the income gap is going to get wider.
Right.
So
Right.
you can't be on the outside complaining that the rich are getting richer, their income is growing. Well, you know what? What are you doing with your income?
And the other thing is you have to be in a position to be able to afford to do that. Without the Warren Buffetts of the world, we're kind of screwed. Like, you know what I mean? Like, somebody has to be in a position to do that.
Look, this really comes down to, and this is the reason why America has to be supported, right? Even with all its social ills, because there's no system, no government on earth that doesn't have social ills, right? So even without social ills, if America goes down, what other nation on this earth will stand for the type of freedoms that we have, even without social ills? There's no other system on earth.
None.
And
None.
what other system on earth, the quality of life, even for our most poorest person, is 100 times better than the average, countries and throughout the world. It's completely different. And then when I hear the false argument comparing America to Denmark and all these other places, a lot of these places aren't even bigger than New York City. That's just the 5 boroughs of New York. I didn't even mention the entire New York State.
Right.
So when you have a small population, you could do a lot with a small population. But when you have 300 300 million plus individuals, it's a completely different dynamic. Then when you factor in, people can't just be moving into Denmark and have open borders in Denmark. Why? Because that would blow up their entire economic model.
Exactly. They couldn't.
So when you have people like Bernie Sanders and ignorance that's running rampant in our society, comparing apples to oranges, and you could do that when people aren't informed to make a rational and economic comparison, then you can actually fool them. So it's really terrible. But let me just give you some. Let me answer your original question. So yes, the market will eventually correct itself, and when it corrects itself, there will be an opportunity to cash out, wait on the sideline, and then figure out what to do when you go back in, right? Because that is part of the entire cycle.
Right.
But I don't think we'll get to that point. And of course, it can happen at any time, right? No one has a crystal ball. But based upon the current economic data, there's 6.9 million job openings, even when the unemployment rate 3, which is the general one that's used and referenced, is at 3.9%. Even the unemployment rate number 6, which adds for part-time workers for economic purposes, that's at 7.4%, which is the lowest since April 2001. But wait, there's more. According to a Deloitte, and it's a consulting firm, one of the largest consulting firms around the world, Deloitte is expecting a $1.3 trillion holiday season.
Whoa!
That is historic. Why? Because people have jobs, they're optimistic about the economy on the right, left, middle, and even those that are politically agnostic, they have a higher confidence level in the economy. So that $1.1 trillion estimate has, and I'll just give you a few companies. FedEx, they said we need 120,000 seasonal employees. UPS, 100,000. Target, 120,000 people at $12 an hour. Macy's, 80,000. Gap stores, 65,000. And that's only 5 examples. So there's going to be a lot of holiday work, and that's good for people that's trying to close some budget gaps.
Yes.
People that want to earn a little bit more to do something extra or special next year. People are also may not have certain skills, but through this temporary employment, they'll be able to get work experience that possibly they can leverage somewhere else in the marketplace to get a better job that's permanent. But let's not forget what happened last year as well. Companies started issuing bonuses to frontline staff, also increasing their pay. With this type of upcoming holiday season on top of a historic year, I see another bonus wave. I see the income wage level increasing. I see confidence level coming back, and I also see with the tariffs and everything else, the Fed being a little reluctant to really start raising interest rates at an accelerated rate, which will actually serve to cool down the economy, and also and I call inflation. Inflation is like the theft of your money. So that'll actually slow down the theft of your money as people are actually trying to earn more. So I see this as positive, and I think we still have another at least 24 months to experience this great Trump economy.
Wow. That's a long time. I mean, that's a really long time. And the only problem that I foresee is that what the media will do is as soon as the slightest thing happens, they'll blame it on Donald Trump. Like they'll say it's all his fault. You know.
Right. And they gave Obama a cushion. But I mean, that's politics, right? But see, people have to look beyond politics.
Oh, well, yeah.
And there are some concerns, right, in terms of student debt level.
Yes.
But hopefully with a continued robust job market, these students and others can actually go get gainful employment where they can, service that debt and responsibly, while at the same time they can maintain a standard of living. So this is where we're at right now. We're at a point where the economy is going well. We're also at a point where, despite tariffs and things of that nature, things are going well. And I know people are in the media is feeding negativity. Oh, this is a tax on the everyday worker, things of that nature. But people, I like to think algebraically, right? Whatever you do on one side of the equal side, you have to do on the other.
Right.
And you also look at the alternative. So when you look at the alternative, like if Donald Trump wasn't fighting for free and fair trade, and we continue down the course that we were on, my father always said, either you pay me now or you pay me more later. If we don't correct certain things now, we will be paying more later because our debt will actually start getting even larger at a faster pace because the deficit will also get larger. And the deficit is constantly, ballooning because, in part, unfair trade.
Very true.
Other things that are driving the debt as well, and other things. But specifically looking at the trade deficit, so you're saying that our wealth is going out of the country, building other nations, when we could actually build that here. And I have to say this, Melanie, right? In part, I love your show because your show is actually therapeutic for me too.
Oh, thank you.
Off my chest.
Oh, thank you.
So when you look at people will this media, and ignorant people will vilify America, but they say nothing about China. They say nothing about China's non-tariff trade barriers, like in order for American businesses to do business in China, they have to partner with a Chinese company, right, and give the Chinese company a large percentage of ownership.
Oh, yeah. Well, people don't know. They don't know that.
How is that free and fair trade?
It's not.
Then, if other companies want to import goods into China, for example, there's a 25% tax. So they are protecting their economy. Then guess what? When those companies partner with a Chinese company and they bring their cutting-edge technology into China, they're actually stealing our intellectual property and creating competitive products to compete.
Right. Then they steal it. Right.
How was that? And then lastly, as an example, they're debasing their currency.
Right.
Artificially.
Right.
So how is that free and fair trade? Some of those things are tariffs, and some of those things are equally detrimental in terms of non-tariff trade barriers.
No, I agree with you. Right.
You have to engage and do business. It's insane that the media and the average person is not calling out China. And I commend the Malaysian Prime Minister for actually calling out China and reneging. Well, he shouldn't renege on a deal, but I understand his reasons for reneging on the deal with China, saying that, you know what, this deal will put us deeper in debt, which is colonial, the new era of colonialism.
But and if President Trump wasn't the first one, like it takes the biggest guy on the block to stand up for the smaller guys to stand behind him. You know what I mean? It takes for the big guy to stand up and say, you know what, no more. And then the smaller guys are like, you know what? Yeah, we're not going to do this anymore. You know, so the United States.
China doesn't have to pay a tax to do business as far as entry level tax, just to do business in America. They're buying up business assets and trying to do trade deals left and right.
Exactly. Now, there's a couple of questions in the Facey chat, and I promised the listeners that I would get to them, and I want to make sure that I do.
Sure.
I copied and pasted them so that I wouldn't forget as they were scrolling by. Todd asks, if you had $100,000, where would you put it where it would be treated best? That's an open-ended question.
Okay. Here. Let me. I get this question answered all the time.
I'm sure you do.
I was leaving a coffee shop just before doing the show, and a lady there asked me the same question. Hey, John, if I had $10,000, what should I do with it? So here's the thing. You have to know yourself before you do anything. You have to know what is your risk tolerance.
Right.
You have to know your ability to assume risk. You have to know your time horizon. In other words, fine, if you have $100,000, do you need that $100,000 in 2 years, 3 years? If so, that will affect where you put the money.
Uh-huh.
And that will affect what type of potential return that you can get. And then is the income that you have, is it steady or there's massive fluctuation? All these things are relative, right? So even if a millionaire came to me and asked me the same question, right? I would ask him everything that I just mentioned. Just because you have a lot of money doesn't mean that your risk tolerance is high.
Right.
Even if you have a high income and you can stand to lose millions, if your risk level is not, if you don't want to take that level of risk, even if you can afford it, then your risk level is not high. So it really comes down to personality as well as your financial situation. So I can't answer that question unless I get more information. I would tell Todd is take a self-assessment on the things that I just mentioned and start with what you know. If you think that you could take a little bit, not necessarily aggressive risk, like long shot, but you could take moderate to a little bit of high risk. If you think that's in your space, then start with what you know. Look at what you're wearing. Look at what you're using. Educate yourself.
Right.
Then maybe put a little money in 4 or 5 different things. And if you're not a stock picker, which requires a lot more research, then throw it into certain mutual funds or ETFs, exchange traded funds. So we educate ourselves in a lot of other things. If we begin to read about different investment vehicles, and when we read and educate ourselves, we not only receive knowledge about things external when it comes to the financial markets, we also learn a lot about ourselves.
Very true.
First and foremost.
Very true. How do you feel about Bitcoin? I haven't talked about Bitcoin or cryptocurrency in a long time. But how do you feel about the crypto market, Bitcoin, all of that whole blockchain?
You know, just like I answered Todd, you know what? Stick with what you know. So John Burnett is sticking to what he knows.
I hear you.
I know about stocks. I know about bonds. I know about exchange-traded funds. I know about options. I know about all this other swaps. I know about all these other complex products.
I hear you.
Cryptocurrency,
Listen, it is, and I read about it. I've read about it several times. I understand the basics of it because I'm a techie type chick, and so because I know the money thing, and I'm a techie girl, so I know the techie stuff, and so basically cryptocurrency is kind of the marriage of the two, but. When you start getting into the investment piece, it's crazy because it's tangible, but it isn't. And well, it's kind of like it's similar to what the dollar. It's kind of like what the dollar used to be. Right after.
Let me say this.
Yeah.
With any investment. And I'm probably aging myself a little bit. Any investment where I can't call somebody,
right,
it ain't happening. There's no help desk,
right? But there's
no push number 2 if the problem is there's nothing like that.
But you know that's the beauty. That's the beauty of cryptocurrency, and it's not regulated either. Now
that all sounds good, but if there is no place to call, to remedy something, that gives me a level of unease, and I'm not alone. There's some sophisticated people out there, wealthy people out there that are also staying away from Bitcoin. Before people get into Bitcoin, I will say learn the regular markets. Bitcoin is more complex than regular markets. And now people are complaining about regular markets, and then they're going to gravitate to Bitcoin. That's completely irrational.
No, you're right about that. And the last guest I was going to have on to talk cryptocurrency had to cancel because they got in a little trouble with the FCC or the SEC.
SEC.
Yeah.
SEC.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of rules and regulations as far as what you can say, what you cannot say.
Right.
They're probably listening to this conversation now.
Oh, well, I'm licensed. I'm an insurance broker. So.
Okay, John, how are you going to answer Todd's question? Like, if you notice, I didn't mention specific stocks. I just gave a general understanding because then I could be cited for improper behavior, so to speak, if I don't know Todd and don't know Todd's specific situation.
Right. I'm licensed too, so I know. You notice I don't do that either. Because I don't want a phone call from any of the companies I deal with either, and I certainly don't want a call from any compliance offices or licensing offices trying to have a discussion with me. I do not.
And can I also mention this point that I told my students last night. You know, I said that there is a level of equality in our tax system when it comes to investments that's afforded the rich person as well as Main Street. So, but we have to understand how our tax system is set up. Our tax system is set up to encourage people to take risk. Well, how so? Glad you asked the question. So when you go to work every day, there is no risk. Because there are laws on the books that guarantee that you will get paid.
True.
So any income where there's a guarantee, there's no risk. So therefore, the taxation is higher. So let's say your tax rate for W-2, 1099, or whatever is 30%. Now, you take that after-tax money, after you paid that 30%, and you invest it. Remember, already taxed.
Right.
So whether you're a rich person putting $5 billion into an investment, or you're putting $5,000 into an investment, if you hold on to it for a year or more and sell it, the capital gain, I'm going to throw an example out there, is 15%. Then you could take certain deductions for charity and this and that, whatever. Let's say it comes down to 13%. That's afforded to any and everyone. And it doesn't make sense to tax non-W-2 income at the same rate as ordinary income. Because the other income that you earn from investments is after-tax dollars. You already paid the higher rate.
Right.
And you didn't make that money by going to work. That money went to work for you. And when the money goes to work for you and brings a return, it shouldn't be counted as regular income at a regular rate.
True.
So the reason why the rich don't pay 30% in that example is because they're not going to work. The money's working.
Well, people don't understand that.
And the key is employ your money. Put your money to work.
Exactly. All right, I have a couple more questions. I want to make sure I get to them. Celeste, who's my homegirl, my sister in the faith, my homie. So I want to make sure I ask that question, or she's going to give me grief. She wants to know how you feel about silver, gold, and platinum. How do you feel about any of those precious metals?
What's her name?
Her name is Celeste.
Celeste.
Yes.
So Celeste has been reading the Armageddon and the End of Day preparation.
She probably has.
That's the reason why she's asking.
She's from New Orleans. Yes.
Look, gold. It's funny how people ask about commodities. Commodities are arguably more complex than buying stocks. In fact, in order to open up a commodity account, you have to have, a higher net worth and a higher, level of sophistication to invest into commodities than you have to have investing into stocks. So I find that quite interesting. But in any case, some people prefer to do that because it's more stable, but then it does include risk, but the level of return is not going to get you the type of return that you might expect or need. And again, nothing is guaranteed in precious metals or in the financial markets, but it all depends upon what you're trying to achieve. So if you're an older person and your runway, not just life expectancy, but your runway to a fixed income period of your life is short, if that runway is short, then you can't take or shouldn't take as much risk. Because if you hit a down cycle in the market, you might not be able to recoup that within your time horizon.
Wow. Those are some very diplomatic words you're using there. If your runway is short and your time horizon, I'm writing. I need to write all this stuff down. Your time horizon. So if you're gonna die soon, no, I'm just kidding.
So now there's risk in those metals, right?
Right.
Metal investments. But generally speaking, at this level where it is now, the probability of if you're seeking a high return, it probably won't be there at this current level.
So in other words,
all depends upon what your expectations, your needs are, and your time horizon. If you're looking to take on risk with the opportunity of capital preservation, which means that you won't lose a whole lot, generally speaking, it might be good, but it all depends upon your risk tolerance. But when the Armageddon comes, right? If that's Celeste call and rationale, I got to put the word on it. It says you can't buy or sell unless you have a mark.
Oh my gosh.
And where can you go if the banks collapse? Where can you? So people are not really understanding even the word of God when it comes to that situation. Oh, I'm going to put my money here, and then they'll say, "Well, I'm going to go to an island when it happens."
No, I don't think that's what she's doing.
I'm just saying, generally speaking, not her per se.
Right.
But if that's her reason, I'm just showing that no matter what you do, if that's your reason to prepare, there is no preparation.
Right. That's kind of the point.
Everything collapses because you can't go to the store with some gold because that person can't even go anywhere to exchange it for anything else of value.
Right. And somebody asked about fiscal gold, so I think you may have just answered that question.
Exactly.
Right. Somebody asked how you felt about fiscal gold.
So just like you go to the store and give that person cash or a credit card, and then that person takes it to the bank, then they have a bank account. There's an economic system of valuation movement of money. But if the banking system collapses, how are you going to take gold into a store and then have that type of exchange? And then where is that person going to take the gold? There'll be no system at that point. There'll be a different type of system that eventually comes in, and that's a whole other conversation.
No, you're right about that, and that's an entirely different conversation for sure. No, you were definitely right about that. Amen on that. Excellent. No, oh my goodness, I'm looking at the comments on the live stream.
What did she say?
She said, "I read and listen to and glean and consult the words, wisdom, and go from there." Of course she does, because she's Celeste. That's she's got. If you ever hear my girl Celeste talk, she's got this incredible accent. She's from New Orleans, and she's got this. Okay. She hates for you to talk about her accent, which is why I'm talking about her accent. She's got this. She's got this amazing accent that's just wonderful to listen to. But she's my big sister in the faith, and who reprimands me regularly for my bad behavior. Well, which I need. I need Celeste in my life. Thank you so much. Where can we contact you to get in touch with you, to have you on your show, watch you on Fox Business? Because normally that's where you are on Friday evenings, but you had a schedule change, and I am blessed to have you on my show. I'm so happy about this.
Well, generally it's on Fridays, but then this week it was on Wednesday, and next week it's on Wednesday, so it moves around. But Fox Business, Charles Payne show, and for the next few weeks, generally, I can't say if I'll definitely be on, but generally it's every week. But there's a schedule change. He's moving to 2:00.
Oh yeah,
from the 6:00 slot. So I might end up being on whoever takes on that show at 6, or move with Charles, or do both. I'm not sure. But what I do is tweet out what I'm doing, where I'll be talking. Somewhere at the intersection of the economy, policy, business, and politics.
Excellent. And your Twitter handle?
All my social media is I am John Burnett, B-U-R, N as in Nancy, E-T-T. Everything is I am John Burnett. Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.
Yes, because branding. Yes.
And I love that I am.
Yeah, that's very good. I was trying to decide if I liked it or not. I still haven't decided. It's good though. I think it's good. I am, yeah. And I think I've only seen one other person that does it that way. It's pretty cool. I feel like if I did I am Melanie Collette, it'd just be weird. But I am John Burnett works.
Yeah, it kind of rolls off the tongue. And of course, I am humble. God is almighty.
Oh, that's true.
And I praise him. I am humble. But I like that I am. It's just so empowering.
And then you have it in everything. Okay, now that right there, now that's good stuff. That's good stuff. That's excellent. Okay.
Well, there's a lot of John Burnett, so I had to figure out. Here's the truth behind it. I had to figure out what can I use across all platforms.
True.
I said, you know what? And I said, well, at the time, the real John Burnett, that implies that there's a lot of phonies out there. So I said, you know what? I am.
True.
That's like saying my name is John Burnett.
I like that. That's good. Okay, I'm going to close the show really quick. I want to thank everybody in the Facey Chat. You guys rock. Everybody out there in SHR Media Land. Hey, listen, Mike Fitzpatrick's under the weather. That's why he wasn't able to be on the show tonight. Those of you for whom prayer is a practice, please do say a prayer for him. I'd appreciate it very much. And I want to thank everyone. If you're listening to this as a download on any of the download platforms, iTunes, Google Play, etc., I thank you for that so very much. I want to thank my guest, John Burnett, for being here this evening. Just wonderful, very good information. I appreciate that so very much. Remember, guys and gals, all of this is very important because, after all, it's your money. Have a fantastic weekend.
I see you looking at the sweaters. Anything I can help with?
I'm liking this one. What can you tell me about the material?
That's an amazing blend. It's 35% cashmere, 30% wool, 20% poly, and 15% cash back.
Oh, I like that.
When you shop with Retail Me Not, you find money everywhere. Coupons, deals, cash back on everything, like cosmetics, travel, restaurants, and clothing, at your favorite places like Best Buy, Kohl's, and Macy's. It's kind of a big deal. Visit the site or get the app. Retail Me Not, yours for the saving.